Born Primitive Outdoor is proud to partner with Montana Knife Company, Marsupial Gear, Evolution Outdoors, Sheep Feet, and Capture Gear. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to our sponsors. So I've got Cliff Gray on the podcast. Cliff is a very unique and interesting individual and a wealth of knowledge, and I've been wanting to get him on the podcast for a while, at the very least, to have everybody that bugs me about how to cape a black bear and send them to him. Cliff, what are you doing? What's up?
Thanks for having me, dude. Yeah, dude, I feel like I feel the same way, Aaron. Like I get asked by a lot of people who watch my stuff. They're like, why don't you have Aron on? Why don't you guys do a YouTube episode? I do some interviews on there. And then I've also had guys that are like, it's too bad you and Aron don't get along. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? I think people just assume that we have publicly connected or whatever, that we're not friends, acquaintances or whatever. So it's kind of funny, man. But no, thanks for having me, dude. I've just kind of got out of the woods from doing a big stint of black bear hunting, and it looks like you've done the same. So, yeah, man, it's that time of year.
Yeah. I didn't have a ton of time. I was fairly, jammed down I was nervous is what I'm saying, that I wasn't going to get that bear, but I got it. But it looked like you guys had some good success as well.
Yeah, we had a good time, man. I mean, the hunting we were doing is, there's black. I don't know the extent of the different types of black bear hunting you've done. And dude, I gotta hear about the big bear you killed. I was harassing you via DM about that little baby bear that you shot. But anyways, no, dude. I like all sorts of different types of spring bear hunting. Aaron. Really, I cut my teeth mostly in BC, log and road type of spring bear hunting. And so this backpack bear hunting that I've been doing in Idaho, the Idaho, Montana border type of stuff in those wilderness areas, it's fun. It's different. It's applying a lot of the same skills, but it is different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I've been lucky enough to have killed bears in every way, from running them with dogs to bait to, high country. And I just did the podcast we posted before this was like a quick, 30-minute soup to nuts of, like you said, deactivated logging roads looking for grass, or when they're in the rut and they're just nose down, following south. There's so many different ways to kill a black bear, but there's also a lot of ways to fuck it up.
Sure.
Whether it's high country or, and I talked about it on the podcast. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it. Once those bears clear out their system and get the poop going from being in the den, once they've kind of got off the grass consistently, dude, it's hard to kill them with a bow. It's hard to stay ahead of them because they just walk like rolling rocks, and they're, but I'd like to get your kind of, take on that as far as high country spring spot and stock bear hunting, from what I said, which I'm not going to repeat it, from the previous podcast. What are your thoughts on that chain of events from they come out of the den, what happens? What are you doing?
Yeah, man. So, and I haven't listened to your podcast, so this will be good, dude, because we can clash on ideas or agree without any predetermined fate here. But my thought on it, man, is that when you get into situations where your logistics are limited, so, the log and road stuff, the thing that's nice, particularly if you're in a giant area where you can actually move latitude, you can move up tiny, right? Okay, everything's greened up here. The bears have been out of the den for 3 weeks or whatever. Well, I can just move up latitude to where the spring is still just cracking. But when you're backpack hunting, or you've got logistics that are similar to that, you can't do that. And I think that's what I've run into is the most frustrating aspect of it, is that, dude, I like hunting them during that green up. for the exact reasons that you're talking about. It's way easier. It's just way easier hunting. They're stickier. Like if you find one on a snow slide, like if you find one on an avalanche chute or something on green grass, within a couple of weeks of him waking up, he's gonna be there. Like it's almost guaranteed. Just go get your wind right, post up on the other side of that deal. He's gonna pop back out. Like a lot of times, literally within feet of where he was feeding before. But man, once they got a lot of country and they start to disperse, it becomes much more of a crapshoot. And the thing is if you got a hike and if you're in like rugged terrain, it's not that you can't do it. It's just your probability goes way down, because now you've got to go up and really just focus on finding good spots where you can see a shitload of country, and then find one and then lock down into him. Then if he's a day hike away, you got to pray that he's a little sticky still, and that's always questionable. So does that answer your question?
Pretty much what I said. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, when they first come out of the den, they're killable with a stick bow. When they get to the point you're talking about, you may not kill them with a sniper rifle. Like it takes some plan. And I say that you can do it, but yeah, it sounds like you have the same whatever. Like for me, kill them when they're on the grass, or it's going to be with a bow specifically. It's going to be tough. Now, if you find an area that a bear's in later on in the spring, you're generally going to find it from parking your ass in one spot and glassing till your eyeballs pop out. It's a matter of knowing what's in front of him if he's going to be there. Like if he's going to stay, does he have things to keep him there? Is he just wandering through? And it can be quite frustrating trying to get ahead of a bear that has no reason to stay. They move a lot faster than people think moving down the hillside. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, dude. And the thing is I think you can pick up a little. I mean, you can get lucky in the sense that if you glass them up from a really long ways away and you can watch them a little bit, I think their mannerisms at least give you a little indicator. Like an example, Aaron, is I'll talk to guys and they'll be like, oh yeah, we saw this bear, and they're talking about a day and a half hike away, and then they'll start describing that they saw him at 1 p.m. or 11 a.m. and he was just loping across a big grassy hillside. It's like, dude, that bear is not going to be there when you get there. Like he's just because you'll see him like that. Once there's a bunch of country that's open up, you'll literally see bears they're jogging across in like the wide open. Like there's no point in going over there, because he's probably already, he could be a couple drainages away at this point. But if you see one and he's like nose down, buried in the grass, or, kind of lingering there, you see him feeding in the same spot for 2 hours, yeah, you got a chance,
No, I agree. And that's the thing is, and I talked about a little about this, but like knowing what time of year and what's popping out, because when you start pushing into June, depending upon what state you're in, now you're really hunting berries more than bears. Like, if you're looking for them to be feeding, you're hoping to God huckleberries are popping out, or they're still out in the fall, or you get a hot sow, and there's a lot of dynamics, to that. But I agree completely. And I've been on the receiving end of, the stick of like, I think I can catch him. And then I get over there and, he's already a mile ahead of me when me trying to run to get ahead. I mean, it is a bit, sometimes you want to stab yourself in the eyeball with a pencil when you have a bow in your hand trying to do that, because you just can't get ahead of them.
Yeah, sure. And dude, I mean, not to put like a damper on it for folks, but I personally, man, like depending on the latitude I'm at, I kind of view, like for me in the western states right now, like bear season's kind of over, Aaron. You know what I mean? Like I don't really like hunting them into the heat. Their hides are not as good. They get dispersed like we're talking about. For me personally, it's kind of over. Now, if I was in, Fort St. James, British Columbia, Prince George, or something like that, way up there, it's like, okay, it's just good right now. You know what I mean? Like it's just springtime right now. But for me down here, man, I mean, obviously it varies a little bit elevation wise, but to me, it's kind of over, unless you want to do the rut thing and get lucky and find bears that are just roaming, but it's tricky.
Yeah, and I mean the rut or the bait. The bait's another one. If you're baiting, it's a different, it's still going on if you have a state that allows you to bait. But no, I mean the heat thing, the worst that can happen, I say worst, but I mean you can shoot an amazing bear that literally looks like it has mange because it's rubbed itself out. And there's just not much hair on it. You get up to it, you're like, shit, that thing's ugly. I mean, it looks like a shaved cat.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, a lot of times, they'll hit one spot and it'll be like their back because they got under a log and they just like rub the crap out of it. I mean, it's not. I don't want to like deter people from going, but it is a thing. I mean, I think anybody that is like, oh, it's just all about the bear meat. It's like, come on, guys, like it's a bear. A big proportion of it is like a really cool bear rug, So I don't know. It plays in to at least my decision process,
No, I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I mean, and I've shot enough bears now to where I really don't mess with them unless there's one in the case of the one I've been hunting the last couple of years, screwed up on it last year, killed it this year. That there's plenty of people out there trying to kill a bear. You don't need my dumb ass shoot. And there's nothing wrong with shooting a 200-pound bear. That's a good bear in Wyoming. That's not a bad bear. It's just for me. Having the big ass rug and the giant skull, meat's meat. I haven't really, I mean, bear meat's bear meat. If it's 200 pounds or 4, it's getting made into probably burger, right? Breakfast sausage is great for chili. Probably not throwing the back straps on the Barbie, right? Like I make it into, sticks and everything else. So one thing I did want to ask you, from your experience, and this seems like the people, and I am not throwing shade on anyone. It is very difficult to tell the size of a bear. I still screw up. I would say that a bear is the number one animal that people shoot and walk up to it and are like, fuck, that is small.
Yeah, dude, 100%, man. I mean, and I think like you, Aaron, I mean, so we've both been around a lot of bears and hunted bears a whole lot, but I'm thinking that we've also, given your background, we've also both been around kind of unknown people that have been around like hundreds of, they've skinned hundreds of bears. And the thing is like even them, they'll make a mistake every once in a while. It's just hard, dude. And I think that the hardest thing for me is that it sounds funny, man, but everywhere the trees are different diameter, right? And the thing is like on a bear, that's your only reference point a lot of the time. Like you can get into, skull shape and ear shape and, pudgy noses and long noses and all that. And like there's some truth to that, but there's no like hard and fast, hard and fast rules.
Certainly not at 600 yards away. When guys are looking at them. And I say that, I generally am going to get it right to where it's an okay bear, right? But you see, and I'm not throwing shade. I see some people 7 foot back on the bear. I know that bear's 70 pounds. The mom had to have been not far away, right? I mean, they get kicked off. They get kicked off the mom, and you can definitely see on a Monday, see a bear with cubs and see the mom the next day and can't find the cubs. They're starting to distance a little bit, but you do see some people trying to do trick photography, and there is very telling signs of like, yeah, that's a 75-pound bear, 80. And I've shot it myself. I mean, years ago, I bet that thing was 80 pounds. I mean, it wasn't big. And, and you kind of learn as you go along. But last year I shot it with a rifle in the trees, and we thought it was the right bear. And we got over to it, and it was a 185-pound bear, not the bear I just shot. And immediately when it was rolling down the hill, I was like, oh, fuck. Not good. Not good. So.
Yeah, dude, they're just, I think it's just hard, man. I kind of misjudged the inverse this year. I had two hunters with me, and I thought the bear was like a medium-ish type of bear, and it was by a ponderosa, and that ponderosa, unbeknownst to me, that thing was like a 30, 40 inch diameter ponderosa. So I was like, that bear doesn't look that big, and then if one guy kind of passed on it, and the other guy had never hunted, he'd never killed anything before, so he was pumped to shoot it. He shot the bear, and then I went up to it, and I'm like, damn, dude, that thing's a lot bigger than I thought it was. just because that tree made it look so small, you know.
Yeah, that happened with
it's hard.
Colton and I last year. I looked at a bear. I'm like, man, I don't know. And we watched it for 20 minutes, and I'm like, go ahead and shoot it. And we got down. I'm like, whoa, I was off by a lot. This is a good bear. So it happens. The one thing though, so, you know, talking about bear hunting. So for me, that, you know, it's like you just talked about some, you know, if the ears look giant on the head, you know, that's definitely one way you want to kind of, as you're going down the list of, am I about to shoot a dwarf, right? Is, you know, if the ears are tiny, probably got a big dome. If they're spread really far apart, like there's all that. But as far as sow and boar, man, I go off the wrist. That's the easiest way for me to tell.
Yeah,
is the wrist.
Like the tape, like the you said the wrist.
Yeah, taper the wrist, taper the leg.
Yeah, the tape. Yeah, dude. That's how I was taught, like by, you know, some Canadians I used to hunt with a bunch. And I think that's the most reliable, dude. Is just how their legs, you know, how the front leg tapers. I think that's the best. And I've heard a lot of guys, you know, talk about like pear body shapes. People think that's reliable.
So I sent you some photos, dude. Pull those up, would you?
If it tapers down the forearm, dude, and you can tell when if you've removed a lot of, you know, you skinned a bunch of them, you've moved the front, you know, feet on them as you're skinning them. Boars are way beefier. Like you know, like just the forearms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's where I talk about the taper, the forearm. But I want you to, I sent you some photos. Can you pull them up?
Yeah.
I want you to look at one that definitely got me.
All right. So I got, let's see, I'm scrolling through. Which one are we
So there's
for
one color face, cinnamon color bear facing directly at the camera. I've got a recurve wearing a Sitka top, bows on the, you know, holding the bow in my left hand.
Okay. Yeah. And you've got the bow vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say? What would you say that one is?
I would say boar.
Yeah, that was a sow.
Oh yeah, it's just you're basing it on the beefy arms.
Yeah, dude, that just was a giant. I mean, I was with Bart Lancaster, had no teeth. Right, we were doing walking bay ups. Let the dogs out. They bayed that walking bay up within 3 minutes. We knew it was just a hammer. Got down to it, and I shot it charging, and I mean, like up close and personal. And I hit. I'm looking at it just like you are, and I'm like, whoa. I rolled it over. I'm like, get out of here. Like, I mean, it can fool you. I mean, looking at that one, to me, I'd say anybody showed me that photo. I mean, I would have shot it anyway. Thing was probably 22, 24 years old, no teeth, giant sow. But I mean, in that photo, that's a huge bear, but it's a sow.
Right. Yeah. No, that's, dude, I mean, it's the same thing, man. Like I watched I saw a clip of somebody's video on sow versus boars, and they were actually kind of being pretty critical of people shooting sows. Which I, you know, okay, like I don't, whatever. I guess it depends on the area and everything else. But they kind of were making the claim that you could tell with, you know, some sort of 100% certainty, and dude, it's just hard. You know what I mean? There's always going to be some.
Yeah, I can't do it with especially depending upon the situation, right? With it charging, I certainly didn't knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, the bear hunting thing's cool. I mean, you know, but I did bouncing all over the place. Like when I did that podcast, I actually brought you up to check out your page. Where can people find the videos? Because I get that one a lot. You know, how do you cape a bear? You know, because there's a lot of, you know, do you go straight to the elbow? Do you go above the elbow? Do you split the pad? Do you cut around the pad? Like, talk a little bit about that, and where can people find that information and videos?
Yeah, dude. So on my YouTube, it's just Cliff Gray, and my last name is spelled with an A, so Gray. If you just put that into YouTube, the search, it'll come up, and I've got a bunch of bear stuff. I think actually, Aaron, there's a playlist on there for bear stuff, and the cool thing about it is I'm actually in the process of updating it all. So I just did this, you know, removing a skull, I put a bunch of shorts on there that, on the cuts. And then also some of the cuts are on my Instagram. Dude, unfortunately, Instagram, sometimes I got to take them down because those sort of things get me chastised. I don't know why. But on YouTube, it's all there. It's like either in my shorts or in the long form videos there. People can get them all. And then I'm like, here in the next 3 or 4 days, I'm posting a new soup to nuts skinny video. And so it's all on there. I have on my website, it's pursuitwithcliff.com. There's some articles on there, and I actually have I have some articles. I got a bunch of pictures on judging bears and telling females versus males, and I actually have a pretty good chunk on like that taper you're talking about, and some pictures that I think depict it. So those are the best resources I think that I've got out there. I will say, dude, you brought up something that makes me laugh, and that's the pictures with bears. So we're talking about how they're the hardest animal to judge, but they are also, to like the layman, they are the easiest animal to manipulate via pictures. Like it's pretty, like, if you're not used to it and you're not dialed in, and I'll be honest, like, if you're like, oh, go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead.
Well, because I can see a picture. Like, so you posted up a picture of this big bear you killed, and there's a picture of you standing, or like you're on your feet, and I could tell when you see a picture like that and you've taken a lot of bear pictures, you're like, oh, dude, that's a big old bastard. Because anytime that somebody's like got an upward angle looking down at the bear, it usually makes the bear look really small. Yeah. If you see just frontal views of a bear, it doesn't give you an indicator of how big the bear is at all. The bear could be huge, the bear could be small, and then you could judge like the distance. But anytime you got like an above picture, because most bears, man, when people take an above picture of them, like down at them, and they see them, they're like, wow, that bear's small. So that's all. That's the angle.
This is what I was going to interrupt. Is we specifically, the first photos we took, it looked too big. And I'm like, Dan, this is going to look fake. I'm like, I got to get under it for one. Like, I got to put its head over my legs. Like, I got to show I'm right here. And then I was like, we got to do some frontals so people, can see. Well, people that know. And it was funny. I had 3 people specifically message me, great trick photography on the bear. And I put, what are you talking about? And, oh, you made that bear look really big. Those frontal photos really show the size of it. And I'm like, yeah, you don't, I was polite. I was like, look, you're really showing your lack of knowledge. The frontal photos are actually the ones that show how big it truly is. Like, you know what?
You're by its head. Yeah, because you're next to its head, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, and I wasn't mad. I was just like, hey, look, actually, we posted very specific photos for people to be able to tell how big that bear was, right? So you could, it wasn't trick photography. Because, I mean, the first photo we took, Dan was laughing, and I'm like, yeah, I can't post that shit. Nobody's going to believe it. I was like, I'm going to get hounded. And I mean, it was, I had photos of the bear on the hoof and everything else. So, I mean, or on the paw. But yeah, the photo thing is funny because I've looked at enough where I'll see somebody post one and I'm like, oh, that's an 80 pounder. That's a small. And then throw 3 guys behind it. I'm like, yeah, you better get about 7 foot back with 3 guys behind that thing, and and get below it because if people don't know, they're like, oh, that's a great bear, and I'm like, man, no, that's a lot smaller than my dog, and they're just weird. Weird to photo.
I think that. One of my thoughts about it though is, Aaron, is like, hey, if you killed the bear, like I'm not going to judge people on what they want to shoot, like this guy's first bears or whatever, or if they just like shoot them, I don't care, but I do feel like you should learn kind of how to take decent pictures. Cause again, it is like a cool memory. Cause one thing that I know is guiding black bears is people who haven't seen black bears, they generally think they're way bigger than they actually are. Like, even a 350, 400 pound, like fall bear it's not that big. Like if I'm a 6 foot guy if I laid down next to it, it's not going to like look like it's quadruple my size or something. And people have that perception that bears are a lot physically bigger than they are. And so I noticed that when I guide people, like even, you know, I like one of the bears we killed here this last couple weeks, probably like it's like a 300 pound, like close to 300 pound spring bear. So it's pretty damn big bear, you know, for the mountains for sure, you know. But I could tell the hunter didn't really. He kind of. I could tell he kind of thought it was small. You know, it's like, dude, this is big. The problem is all these pictures you see make them seem. You make everybody's bear look bigger. But it is important to take, like, if you want decent pictures, know how to take them, because these bears are not going to look. You know, a 150 pound bear. If you don't take decent pictures, it is going to look like you just shot like a cub. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think it's important to it's like as a guide, it's kind of like, sure, it's a little bit of like a trick of the trade, but it's also like a deliverable to the person. I want them to have a nice picture of a bear that looks decent, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in context, right? And I mean, it's the same thing with mule deer or fish or whatever. Like, you know, you can make average, or I would say average, an 18 to 20 inch brown trout look 25, right? Or whatever, unless you really know you're looking. And it gives people a false sense of what it is. Mule deer is horrible. Like, I don't know how many people that shoot, you know, 155, 60 inch mule deer and they're like depressed. And I'm like, that's not a bad buck. Like, and they're like, look at this one. And I'm like, that deer there is 155 inches. They just made it look like 170 inches. And the bear thing is kind of, you know, you can go either way, like you're talking about. So, but in context, a 300 pound bear is a fucking big bear. Like, no one should ever be depressed about a 300 pound bear, which is actually the next thing I want to talk about. When you talk, because I've gotten criticized years past about, I'll say, hey, it's 6 foot squared. So what people need to understand, there is different, which this is a huge rabbit hole of shit talking and internet hate, but there's different ways to look at a bear, right? One is age. Is it old? That's the first thing. You want an old, mature bear. The next thing, you've got the length and width of the hide, and you'll get Chewbacca bears is what I call them. I stole that from Bart. Big, long-legged, long bears. Then you get kind of the fat Albert bear, the short, fat, huge bear, but just doesn't have the length. And then you have the score of the skull, right? And the score of the skull and the hide are actually kind of the same thing, right? You got the between the ears, down the nose. When somebody says 7 foot squared black bear, they're probably lying, but maybe not, right? But a 6 foot square black bear is a damn good bear for me. So I'm kind of passing this off to you now. What are your thoughts on that? The skull, the length, everything.
Yeah, man. So the biggest thing with length, and a lot of guys do this, including guides and stuff, is when they measure them, they just say a measurement, but they might say squared, but they're not actually squaring them. So just everybody's got to realize that how you measure them matters, because you can stretch a 4.5 foot bear to 6.5 feet if you just do one measurement. So, if you just go tail to nose and you pull him taut, he's going to be 6 foot. So, but the thing is that you can't measure him that way and then grab each one of his arms and then pull him the other way tight and then measure him that way. You got to measure him one way and then not move him, and then measure him the other way and then average the two. So that's go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what I do, and then you tell me like you're as bad as everyone else. So I get a nose to I lay it out and I stretch it width and length. Just get it laid out like a carpet. I get nose to tail and I get wingspan, and I will say something to the effect of, "Shit, Cliff, that motherfucker was 7'6" nose to tail, but he only squared it just over 6. That means he was a long, skinny bear, right? I mean, and that's why I give the two dimensions is like, you can have a really fat, short bear that technically squares longer than or better than a longer bear, because you do the length and the width when you square, the bear. So I generally give the nose to tail and then the square for perspective. But what do you do?
Yeah, no. That it doesn't. Yeah, no, that's fine. The thing that makes the erroneous results, if it matters
When
to
they
people,
stretch the shit out of both ways.
Well, yeah, they stretch them both ways. You know what I mean? They do a nose to tail, and they get that measurement, and then one guy will grab a front paw, other guy will grab the other front paw, and then they'll pull them that way, and then they'll get them that way too. So you can't you can't like double dip on it. I mean, in the end, dude, like who cares,
whatever,
right?
yeah.
But if you want to compare like apples to apples, that's what it is. And so when somebody says they killed like a 7-foot squared black bear, regardless if it was short and fat or tall and long, it was a big bear because you're basically, in a sense, you're kind of measuring like square footage of the hide, right? As long as you don't pull them. Now, what you're talking about makes sense because it's going to depict more of like what the bear, what the bear is. Yeah, but and I think that's a good point, Aaron. That I don't think people realize, like, these dynamics, age, the height and width, and how they put on weight and all of that. I have heard over the years, I've heard it from biologists even say that it's all about feed source, and I haven't had that experience, man. I think that bears, and there's a lot of. It's kind of weird because bears, there's a lot of analogies to humans. I mean, even if you watch them a lot and, how they interact with their cubs, like all this stuff, it's amazing, these little things you pick up, like that they're kind of like humans. But in this regard, they're kind of like humans too. There's just huge variation, man. Like there are bears that will be 15 years old and they're just never going to get over 220 pounds.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I've argued this. It's genetics like a human. You look at some of the bears in my buddy Dan's spot. Genetically, they're not as long as bears in other regions, but they're really big. And, we don't have Chewbacca bears, but they're all short and stubby. When I say short, they're not short, but you know what I mean. And I would say it's far more genetics. Like, I'm never going to be skinny. It's just not happening. I'm a big dude, and my kids probably won't be skinny, and their kids. We might have an offshoot that we get a skinny kid, but the chance of a 6'8", 350-pound dude, popping out a kid that's 5'6" and 140 at his biggest is not good, right? I think it's genetics.
Right.
Feed helps, right? Feed helps gain weight, but mule deer the same way. Elk. There's going to be mule deer that just they're coal bucks. They're never going to be a giant buck. Might be a good buck, might be great mass from age, and they just get more massive with age. But I'll shut up now. I agree with you if that's what you're saying. I think it's genetics. There's a lot of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's huge, dude. I mean, I think that people take it for granted, right? They think that all bears are going to be the same. And I think that's why it like circles back to the whole judging thing. Like, you'll hear the facial structure. So like you were talking about the ears, and the ears I think are a pretty good indicator too. And I actually think the eyes are too. Like if the eyes look really small and beady, they're usually on like a big old noggin, But I have seen bears with, that just have stumpy noses, or bears that have long noses. And it doesn't matter, and it's not related to their age or size. They're just genetically different, And it kind of goes back, I haven't been doing much of it lately because I kind of live an odd lifestyle now where I change locations where I live throughout the year. But, I used to be an official measurer for Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young. Technically, I guess I still am, just don't do it all that much. So I used to measure a lot of skulls. And then, like, even the skull thing is very much genetic. And you can have like fairly young bears that have big skulls, and you can have old bears that just never have a big skull,
Yeah, no, I mean, Bart and I have talked about this a lot because Bart's killed, between you and I and 7 other people combined, probably double of that. Like, with all the running with hounds and everything else, they just shoot a lot of bears, and he's a bear dude. Right. That's his thing. And, he's seen some of the bears I've killed that just never went over 20. Great bears, big bodied bears, just not, never quite crested, 20 inches. And there's nothing to be ashamed of that. But I would say, and I'd be totally out to lunch on this, a 6-foot square black bear with around 19, 18 and 3/4 inch skull would be like 165 inch ish mule deer. I guess if you're going to put it in, context, a good mule deer, and then like a 7-foot squared 20 inch is really pushing into that, 190 plus type of a mule deer. I've never actually talked about this side of the equation before, but a 6-foot bear is a good bear, right? It's a good bear, and a 19-inch skull is not a bad skull on a black bear, to me. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, dude. I mean, to me, there's a little bit. I guess there's like regional differences a little bit, but if you're talking about the Western states, I think a 7-foot squared black bear is a 200-inch typical mule deer. It's that rare. You know what I mean? Like maybe not quite that rare, but pretty damn close. Like I've seen one in Colorado that was a legit 7+ squared bear, and it was freaking huge. And that's out of like probably, I don't know, like here in Colorado. yeah, like that's like one, so out of a ton. Now when you get in, for sure, when you get into coastal British Columbia, the bears are bigger. There's no doubt. Like the black bears are a bit bigger, and 7-foot bears are a little more common. But man, in the Western states, like 7-foot squared black bear is a 200-inch mule deer. That's kind of my thought on it. And then honestly, Aron, on the skull, even though I've like I said, measure for Boone and Crockett, I think it's cool. I think it's neat, but I don't really view it as a metric that's all that important to me. You know what I mean? I almost feel like it's kind of just random chance to some extent. You know what I mean?
I like your thinking, because there for a long time I never shot a bear over 20-inch skull. I shot a bunch of good bears. Hey, take a look at that photo I just sent you of that bear on the paw. I mean, obviously, I really wanted to dive into this because, I get stuck in my own echo chamber, so it's always good to bounce stuff around on, with different, different people that have a lot of experience on bears. But that upper photo, did that come through?
I'm looking, yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at two game camera pictures here.
Yeah.
This thing looks like a freaking. It looks like a bulldog in the first.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a tank.
Yeah, and I'm only bringing, I screwed this bear up last year. You know what I mean? Like we have a bait site set up, right? So, and some people, we'll get into that in a second, don't like the bait thing or dogs or whatever, but we had a bait set up, and we actually, man, I couldn't kill him on the bait. He was just smarter than I was, so we kind of had to reinvent the wheel a little bit. But I mean, that for Wyoming, I mean, that is a big bear, right? That's just a big bear all the way around. Sure. But you go up to like where you're talking about in BC, I mean, that's not uncommon, right? There's big bears up in that country you're talking about. And, I mean, the crazy thing is I think the world record's Pennsylvania or freaking Tennessee or something.
Yeah. I think it's bears that live in thick cover and just pack it on, man. It's probably genetics too. But yeah, you hear these like 500-pound, gigantic bears coming out of Pennsylvania and stuff.
Yeah, I'm reading it now. The world record black bear is an 880-pound bear harvested in Craven County, North Carolina in 1998. And if you know, so we'll get to my story on this bear in a minute because it's informational, also kind of a shit show. But an 880-pound black bear, like what we ended up finding out is the bear that I killed was beating the shit out of grizzlies, not letting them come into the bait.
Okay.
And there's a whole story to this, as I told you some of it, which I'm not even sure I want to talk about this online because there'll be rumors stirred up. But there was there was 2 grizzlies that came in right after I killed that bear, and the Fish and Wildlife Department was fairly certain that bear was probably beating the shit out of them. Give you an idea, and then you go up to BC, you've got giant black bears, you've got giant grizzlies, you've got everything up there. So,
yeah, well, dude, it's interesting though, and that I mean, looking at this bear is obviously big. And it's another thing that people don't really understand, Aaron, that I think it's worth pointing out. Like interior grizzlies a lot of times are not that much bigger than big black bears. You know what I mean? Like, they can be the same size. I mean, for sure they got like a different attitude and that sort of thing. I have noticed though, man, like in general, in areas where I've hunted black bears where there was brown bears or grizzlies around, they act completely different. Like, usually they're moving a lot more. They're like, their head's on a swivel. And from my experience, they stay away from grizzlies and brown bears. But I can see like a bear this size that you're showing me, kind of standing his ground on them, which makes sense.
Well, and I'll just tell the quick version of this story, and I want to make sure in context, because the Fish and Game got involved. It was my fault. I did nothing wrong. I did not get a ticket. I did not get a warning. And the Fish and Wildlife Department were great with this. They were amazing. They gave me the benefit of the doubt. But there's always a but. So when I shot that bear, initially when I went and checked it in, I wasn't wearing orange for the photo, which is totally legal. But of course, people had messaged in, so they were waiting for me to turn the bear in. Asked me if I was wearing orange. Super cool. So when I checked it in, I said the name of the bait site, right? And then they wanted a pin, and I popped up my mapping software, scrolled out, grabbed the pin, gave it to them, left, good to go, everything's fine. Get a phone call the next day, and they're like, hey, this is whoever with the Fish and Game department, like, man, we could not find your bear. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't mad. I was like, and then they were like, it was like we were way west. And I'm like, oh shit, I gave you my fucking 8-digit grid coordinate to my game camera, right? So when I checked it in, I said I shot it not on a bait, but on a bait, right? We were by a bait. Well, you can't bait in the wilderness. The pin I gave them was a mile into the wilderness, right? Like it was. So then they're like, what the hell is this guy doing? So they go to check it out. And so they call me, and we're talking, and I'm like, man, I think this is more than just a friendly conversation. I think they think I've done something wrong. So I'm like, hey, sure, are you cool if just come out with me? And they're like, yeah, no, that'd be great. And I'm like, can you do it tonight? Because I'm flying out to Virginia Beach tomorrow, whatever. And I said, and I called them back, and I was like, hey, I just want to make sure you're cool. We're going to rebait the site because I don't want to be hiking up and down this hill a ton, and the road sucks. So are you cool if we bait the site? And they're like, yeah. So, they don't know. In their defense, they have no idea what the hell is going on, because I said I shot the bear 300 to 400 yards from the bait. The carcass is, I don't know, 50 to 70 yards from the bait. They actually had found it. They kind of fibbed a little bit to me. They had found the kill site, right? But when I was that open and honest, and I very cooperative, and then I drove to the spot where it should have been, not way towards the wilderness. They're like, okay, this guy's probably on the up and up. So then we go down there and walk him to it, and the dude was super. All three of them were awesome. I mean, this was one of those stories of you can't, these guys were all solid dudes. So we're bullshitting back and forth, and he's like, okay, next question. You said, which I don't know that this is an infraction or whatever, but they were like, you said you shot it 300-400, and he said 400 yards. I said, no, that's not what I said. I said 300 or 400 yards from the bait. And he's like, well, it's dead just right down there. And I'm like, yeah, dude, but I shot it on this mountainside. I rolled it off the hill, and I said it was wedged under a log when it finally died. Explained everything where I was running it down, wedged under a log, kicked it out from under the log, it rolled, and then we kicked it again to get it on the bottom. So again, they were super cool. I walked them through the whole thing, came up, showing blood, and I'm like, hey, look, at this point, I'm like, I don't want you guys to think I'm a piece of shit. Like, you guys get it now, right? And they're like, oh yeah, this makes way more sense. And they're like, and we don't expect you to be pinpoint accurate on distance, but yeah, you're way up on the mountain, where you made the shot and everything else. And so then, they're concerned if a grizzly comes in, you have to shut the bait site down. And they were fairly certain that at first, I'm sure that I was fabricating a grizzly hadn't come into the bait. And I'm like, guys, you don't need to issue a warrant. Here is all the SD cards. We handed him a pile of SD cards. I'm like, you're more than welcome. Look at them all. He's like, when's the last time you checked the bait? Which was super cool of him to do, because after I shot mine, Grizzlies did come in.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's like, and I said, hey, you'll see me on the card, so you'll know, be able to verify this, whatever. And sure as shit, dude, Grizzlies came in right after I killed that bear, and they're like, you know what? We bet, because these are like probably 4-year-old, 3-year-old grizzlies. That bear was keeping them off this bait, and when you killed it, they came in. That's why you never had an SD card, a grizzly on your SD card, is this guy was holding down the fort, on that. And so again, nothing happened. They were super cool. I made friends out of the deal. But it was a bit of a shit show, and it was my fault because my dumbass grabbed the pin, not paying attention, and gave him a fucking pin that was a mile away from the bait site of the kill site. So it was a learning thing for me as well, and again, a very good experience because you hear horror stories with the fish and game department, and these guys were awesome. They were great. They were very open minded. So I can't say enough about that as well, but it did turn into a bit of a shit show, and I was nervous because I'm like. I try not to do anything. I think I did everything right, and so anyway, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, it's no, I get it, but they're just doing their job. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff can happen, and then they have, they obviously have to like dig into it if they feel like they've got a kind of an odd data point or something like that. So I totally get it, but yeah, I also get the whole deal where it can be nerve-wracking. I've had, in particular, I was outfitting, Aaron, I had game wardens and stuff that I would consider good friends. They lived in the same communities as me. I interact with them all the time. They're always transparent with them if we had issues or saw things or whatever. But when it was hunting season and they came out, like, they still did their job. Like, it's funny because, like, I would be having conversations with them that were like in and out of like what's going on with my outfitting business and guiding and who's here and there and who's been killing animals and who hasn't and all of that. And then we're also talking about our kids playing baseball and everything else in the community. But in my mind, I'm realizing like, oh, their line of questioning, like they're pros because they're still like gathering information even in like a casual conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I've always said, like, when I've had friends that are game wardens, I'm like, man, if you show up at my front door, you probably should be there. I've probably done something, you know what I mean? Like if you're here, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, whether I meant to or not. You're probably there for a reason that I, more or less deserve. So, and again, these guys were great. Like they were super cool just looking into it. And I'm the one that screwed up because I told them, oh yeah, I shot it by a bait way in the wilderness and you can't bait in the wilderness. So once we walked down there, loaded up the bait and everything else, they were super, super cool. But the thing that's not funny, I messed up on that bear last year. I shot the wrong bear. And then a week later, I'm in the high country, mile and a half, 2 miles from that bait site. And, there's the bear right there. The one I showed you on the game camera, he's in the high country rolling boulders around, giving me the middle finger. And so Dan and I were like, all right, we're going to get him this year. Like we're going to kill him. So it ended up working out good. We just, we ended up having to kind of hang off the bait quite a ways and just watch because he was just smart and he, you'd load up the bait, you'd leave, he'd come right in, sit there for 4 hours, 6 hours, leave, he'd come right in. And I'm like, man, Dan and I were talking, we're like, we just got to hang way back. And ended up catching him sleeping, so it worked out great.
What do you think he was? What do you think he was doing? You think he's like winding you guys, or just like a timing thing?
Man,
like,
and that,
how was he avoiding it?
I think wind, man. I think that even if we had a good wind, occasionally it would swirl, and I think he was closer than we thought because there's multiple times, he would roll in right after we left. Right? I mean, he. Whether that was noise or whatever else, I mean, but like when we were in there and we'd get a swirl of wind, we'd have bears come in that were younger, but he would not come in. And yeah. I'm chalking it up to he's just old and smart, just like any, 6-year-old whitetail or mule deer, whatever. They get smarter. And we'd been feeding him and making him our friend for a while. And I think he's just like, oh yeah, there's two fat dudes. I'll come in after they leave. And, if he had anything wrong, he wouldn't come in. And I think he was a lot closer than we thought protecting that bait. He just didn't show himself till he was 100% certain we weren't there. Yeah,
dude, it's interesting, man. And, I want to get you more your perspective on baiting. It's funny because I think people, when I talk to them, they have a preconceived notion that I don't like baiting. I just haven't done a whole lot of it, Aaron. But the people I've interacted with who have done it in the minimal time I have spent doing it, they learn a ton about bears because they get to observe them so much. You know what I mean? And because you can sit there and watch bears all for 4 hours every night in some of these areas. You know what I mean? So they pick up on a bunch of info in that regard. But the other thing is you realize baiting is so much freaking work. Packing in the bait, and it's like I think the outsiders to it have no idea. I mean, there's areas right now where I guide. The only reason we don't bait because it's illegal to bait is the workload. It's just easier to spot and stock them due to logistics and stuff.
Oh no, I agree, and I mean I don't. Man, if it's legal, I just whatever, right? I mean, I don't get too wrapped up in it. My thing is I've shot bears in BC. I've shot them in the high country. I've shot them with dogs. And if I had more time, I'd 100% be more apt to high country bear hunt because I like to backpack hunt.
Sure.
And honestly, I say that I'd probably be more apt to help people high country backpack bear hunt than do it myself. And the other thing too is I like shooting stuff with a bow, and I'm not saying it can't be done in the high country with a bow. It can, and I've done it. It also can be very frustrating and time consuming and a pain in the butt. And so it's kind of a rifle thing. I'm not saying you can't. I mean, please, internet people, I'm not saying you can't do it in the high country with a bow, especially when they first come out of the den. You can do it. But it is much easier with a rifle in the high country. So, I'm not opposed to shooting one with a rifle either, right? I just, for me, I've shot enough of them now that, if next year, if you called and said, hey, Aaron, you want to go on a Wyoming bear hunt? You want to backpack in? I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. You going to hunt? No, fuck no, I'm going to help you. Like, it's not as much of a thing. You know what I mean? Like, I just like going. So, and I don't think, it's crazy. There's guys that hate baiting whitetails that bait bear every year, talk shit about people baiting whitetails. And I'm like, dude, you bear bait every year. What's the difference? I mean, people get pretty wrapped up in that. It's kind of crazy. So.
Yeah. People go down the whole deal. And I like my 100% favorite way to hunt bears is with dogs. Like, but to me, it's almost a different thing, Aaron.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a totally different endeavor. But it's fun. It's really fun. I mean, I actually really like hunting bears with dogs more than I like hunting lions with dogs. But unfortunately, it's just limited where you can do it even more so than lions. So it's one of those things that's the same deal. People tend to crap on things that they haven't tried or they don't have any kind of context on.
Yeah, and I mean the thing that with running bears with dogs, there's one, I love to see the dogs work. I mean, that it's an art form. Houndsmen to me are, is timeless as I don't know, whatever. I can't come. It's running hounds is amazing. So I love seeing Krillian bear dogs work. Spitz dogs. A lot of the dogs I've seen up in BC. And the other thing too is when you get out, if you cut a track, you can tell like, okay, the paw, the pad is 5.5 whatever the pad. Yep, let's let it rip. Sure. And you can you can be a lot more picky on what you're taking off. Let the dogs taken off on. And again, I don't know, man. I just don't understand. I don't see why people get. Yeah, I don't even want to get into that. I just don't. I mean, there's hunters that hate running hounds, and I'm like, man, it's the most effective, ethical way to do it. And when I say ethical, you see a bear in the fall, guys shoot it, right? They just shoot it. There's a bear. I got a bear tag, whatever. You can pick the most dominant, oldest or animal in the species that you find, and you can kill it. And they kill lots of calf elk and are horrible to ungulates, and you get to help that, right? You're shooting one of the older ones if you're accomplished at it.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a totally different thing. And I think probably what it comes down to, Aaron, is that there's like the spoken idea of like being selective, and then there's what actually happens. Let's be honest, like in spot and stock hunting, generally people are way less selective because they just don't have the data points to be more selective. So guys will say that, oh, like we're trying to kill big bears, we're trying to kill only boars or whatever, or, like, I mean, there's all these different things that people will say, but when you actually look at what's happening, generally the dog guys are way more selective because they can be, right? And lions are like, with lions, it's the exact same thing, right? Like guys that are shooting, I'm not like crapping on anybody, but I love lion hunting, man. And every time like somebody takes, spot and stalks a lion and shoots it, they glass one up and shoot it. It's awesome. It's cool. Like I'd love to do it one day, but it makes me cringe a little bit because a lot of the same people will knock guys shooting them out of trees. And it's like, man, when you glass up a lion, you really have no idea if it's male, female, whatever. The reality is you don't even know if it's going back to a den somewhere. Who knows? You know what I mean? But the hounds guys got all that information to make like a very educated choice. Like it's not even in the same ballpark. I'm not saying either one's better, worse, whatever, but I'm saying if you're just talking about being selective, it's not even the same ballpark, man.
No, and I mean, I've definitely had this conversation with, some people get the holier than thou. I killed it, in the high country, whatever. But it's like, okay, all right, you're going to poo-poo on, running dogs or baiting, but let's say running dogs. And it's like, okay, you just shot a 103-pound bear that just started the beginning of its life, and my buddy just shot one that's 16 years old running it with hounds. In my opinion, right, like the shooting the 16-year-old bear is better conservation speaking than the one just beginning his life or whatever. So I just try not to get in the middle of it anyway. It's just not worth the effort is what it boils down to.
No, I mean, the reality, the way I would put it, dude, is like it's all fun, Aaron. And overall, like if you want to get the nitty-gritty ego of it, the houndsmen are generally better hunters because they're degenerate, dude. Like they've dedicated their whole life to having a bunch of hounds around their house, and they're just obsessive hunters. And if you've been around enough of them, they just have like a lot of reps. There's not a lot of guys that have 10 hounds that screw up basically the rest of their life and piss off their neighbors and their wife and girlfriends and kids and everything else, just so they can go hunting like one time a year. Like usually they're like obsessive hunters. So they're just good at it. And so there's no point going down that road. You know what I mean? And from my perspective, it's all fun. I like to do it all.
Yeah. No.
That's what I've found.
Yep. I'm with you on that one for sure. And, for people that are looking at, bear hunting, and we've been almost an hour, so I've kind of, finished these last few questions up with, the podcast up with these is, for people that, message and reach out that, hey, I'm looking at doing a bear hunt for my first hunt, spring bear, fall, whatever, that kind of, those kind of questions. And hey, what's a good outfitter to go with? So first question, are you guiding? Are you outfitting? Do you have, info that you can give people listening to this podcast that you could take them out?
Yeah, so on the spring bear front, I've been doing them with Jordan Jonas, which I know is a mutual friend of ours. And I'm going to continue to do that. And each year we're changing it a little bit. We've been doing it as fly-in hunts, which makes it fun, flying into backcountry strips and then backpack hunting from there. And we've been doing them as group hunts, so groups of 4 or 5 guys. and they're a blast, man. I wouldn't say that everybody on them is a brand new hunter, but we get the spectrum. Like I get guys that have hunted quite a bit, and then I get guys that literally it's like the first time they've been in the woods. And I think everybody actually gets value out of that and has fun with it. So I do that, and that's all that info is on my website, pursuitwiththecliff.com. And then this year I'm doing some fall ones actually with my old crew in the flat tops, and kind of the same idea. I have them. I actually think I might have one spot in the fall that opened up, but other than that, it's all just opening for 2026.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of what I was, referring to, for next year for sure.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean that as far as like the Cliff has openings in 2026. The next one is, do you think that's a good hunt for people to come out on as their first hunt? Well, I'll give my 2 cents. I think it's a horrible idea to come out for a black bear for your first hunt in the fall if that's the only hunt you've ever done out west. I think if you can get a tag, it would be probably a little bit funner to do a different animal. I think it is a great idea for the spring, unless you're going with a guide that can help you out. Me personally, that's my thoughts on that. But what are yours?
Yeah, man. So I'll give you the whole concept of why I do them in the spring. And the reason is that, and why I chose to do them the way that we're doing them, is all I was thinking to myself is like, well, there's the economics of it, right? Because it's not overlapping with the fall seasons where every outfitter is crazy busy. I can do it for less money, which is relevant to new hunters. And then the other side of things is that there's a ton of overlap in terms of skill set. You know what I mean? And then like if you go into, the Frank Church or somewhere like that, doing a spot and stock spring black bear hunt, everything that you're doing, like skill set wise, glassing, finding glassing points, all the camping stuff, all the just living in the wilderness stuff, all of that is directly applicable to elk and mule deer hunts in the fall, really in any of the western states. So I think it's a good intro in that regard, just because stylistically there's so much crossover of skills, and it's a good intro. And then the other reality is that it's more comfortable than going into, say a first rifle elk hunt, is your first backpack elk hunt or backpack hunt period. There's a lot, it's the spring black bear hunts are way lower key in terms of like, the intensity of when you got to be where, in terms of, just the logistics, the temperatures, all of that stuff. They're just easier. So they're a good intro in that way. I think the fall hunts, man, the ones that I have historically done, the ones I'll do this fall, they are they're not as broadly applicable to all the other species that people want to hunt, but they're very glassing centric. I mean, basically, man, we find glassing spots on feed sources, and we just we'll be there for 7 or 8 hours every afternoon, and that's basically how we're hunting them. And so it's more, I would almost say that it's very like glassing skill set centric. And then of course, all field dressing the bears and all that stuff, dealing with the meat, that's applicable. But that's how I feel about it. I think that if a guy wants to be a backpack hunter, regardless of the species, the spring hunts, doesn't matter if you do it with me or if you just put it together and do it yourself or whatever. I think it's a good intro,
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, because that's pretty much my views on it. Do it in the spring. You're not screwing up your fall hunts. You're probably going to see more bears, going to be a little bit more active. It's something to do, right? It's in the springtime. You're probably, cooped up, get out of the house, right? You'll learn a lot along the way for when you transition into, something else.
Yeah. No, for sure, man.
Oh, well, cool. Well, dude, like I said, we just hit an hour. You already gave it. Give everybody the 411 on where they can find you, look for info, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. So on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com, I've got a newsletter you can sign up for on there. It's pretty obvious when you jump on the website. And then my YouTube is just Cliff Gray, and then my Instagram is Cliff GRY. Any of that stuff, that's the best way to keep up to date. And reach out to me if you have any questions.
Cool. Right on, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast. And even though it sounds like people think we don't get along, the friendship and everything else over the years and the info that you put out, it's great. So you're just a wealth of knowledge and a good resource. So thank you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man.
Heck yeah, dude. All right, take it easy. Sheep Feet is offering an incredible discount in the month of June. Use code BPO to save yourself 25% off on your next purchase.